Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
It's very rarely that you see someone go from being a Disney creative executive to a horror movie auteur, but here we are as I get to speak with Greg Singer about his latest film, 6:45 in the morning. Greg, I do have to ask, did Mickey drive you that crazy that like everything now has to be a horror movie?
Mickey did. He drove me, him and Donald drove me batshit crazy, and here I am. Nice to be on your show, RC. Thanks for having me.
Listen, man, the pleasure's mine. You are in Manhattan. I'm in California. Through the magic of technology, we get to communicate and talk about this film. This is heavy, man. Like, Groundhog's Day meets horror thriller. How did the project come about for you? Because I know Robert Dean Klein, not to be mistaken with Robert Klein, the actor, wrote the film. And here you go, come up with this phenomenal horror movie.
Yeah, thank you. It was a while ago. It was actually before I was even with Disney. I'd done a few horror films for Lionsgate, and I always loved the concept of Groundhog Day. And this was kind of before time loop thrillers were in vogue. So this was before a lot of the films subsequently. So I thought it was a great premise, great landscape and backdrop. So I wrote a story outline, and I tend to be much lazier as a writer these days. So I handed it off to Robert, and we've worked together for many, many years. And yeah, I was really pleased with the script. And, the challenge doing time loop is to let it not feel monotonous for the audience. And I feel like we did a really good job in keeping it varied and moving forward, and really, really fortunate with my cast and my location. And I'm very proud of the film. I think people are going to like it.
Well, you did something right. I mean, you're working with Wellgo USA. They've put out some incredible martial arts movies, some great action films. Here we are in the horror genre. You were at Catalina, which surprisingly is when I got sick, is when you were at Catalina Island Film Festival. You won, New York Movie Awards, jury selection at the Hollywood, and so many other. Well, I'm losing track, man. Florence Film Festivals. You've been all over the place with this movie.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. The people at the festivals have been really generous, and people really love us. I think we took top honors at Rome and Florence and Paris and a bunch of other places. So I feel kind of like Jerry Lewis. They really respect and appreciate our work overseas. Of course, I'm joking. I think our domestic release is going to be gangbusters. Wellgo have been incredibly supportive of the film, and just couldn't be nicer. And they've got a great team over there. With Doris and company, and I'm really thrilled to be in partnership with them, and hopefully it's the first of a few, if not many.
Well, you're doing something right. I mean, horror movies have really had their resurgence, especially during the pandemic. The world is a scary enough place. We're facing World War III right now. We just escaped the global pandemic. Everything seems to be falling apart. Gas is going to hit $10 at some point. Why do we continuously want to be scared? And now, especially during scary times?
Well, in comparison to world events, this is more like a Disney movie, I'd say. This is very light fare, as it were. But, honestly, what was interesting is that when we started the film, a lot of my cast and crew were very sick, and there wasn't even a name for COVID at the time. So we just thought they had a flu. And then 2 weeks after we wrapped, the world really turned upside down. And then I spent the next year doing the one thing the pandemic encouraged, which was working virtually alone in darkened rooms with my post team. So we used that time productively and kind of head down into the wind, if you will. And we really had time to massage and polish the film, which really, I think, enriched the film to dig out some of the tertiary details. A lot of times filmmakers are just under the gun with post-production. And we had the luxury of, I hate to say the luxury of the pandemic, because that sounds kind of morbid, but we really used the time to our advantage, and I think it shows in the film.
It's got to be difficult doing pickups and stuff when the world has fallen apart, and we went into this extreme lockdown to sit there and go, oh, we have this movie, let's try to reshoot a couple of things here and there.
Well, we don't know what pickups are, so we didn't have that luxury. But interestingly, my lead Augie had to fly back to California for a festival. She's a incredibly talented indie darling, and when she went to LA, we used that time to do some B unit and some pickups with my lead Michael Reed, and my cinematographer Lucas Patassi came in from LA and just developed this great kind of esprit de corps family of kind of Coppola style filmmaking, a la, circa late 60s, early 70s, where we all lived under one roof and everybody kind of pitched in and wore many, many hats. So it was a true blessing in that regard.
Right. And to keep things in time, you finished just before the pandemic. The Blu-ray is being released on Tuesday, March 22nd. You have Ukrainian actress Sasha K. Gordon in the film, which she's phenomenal. She came to the United States, I believe, when she was 15 or 16 years old. So we're just tying your entire movie into world events at this point.
Yeah, it's so true. And I saw a film Sasha did where she was nominated for a Canadian Academy Award, and such a interesting, beautiful, talented woman, and we'd wanted to work together. And my cast, I didn't have a casting director, so I kind of cobbled it together with people that I'd known and worked with and wanted to work with. For example, Armen Garo, he's so incredibly, people think he's steals the show, but I met him at the Actors Studio at a Lyle Kessler play, and I just walked up to him and I kind of accosted him and I said, "I love your work." I'd seen him in The Departed and The Sopranos and American Hustle, and I said, "Let's work together." And he was like, "Yeah." Tom Waits, who plays Larry the bartender, he had old-time friend. Tom is a great actor. People know him from The Warriors and The Thing, and he actually directed my first off-Broadway production called Paradiddle, which is about a drummer, which I'm actually doing the feature film version. We're casting that right now. And so, yeah, the cast is, we cobbled it together. Ali Marshall, Sabine Hoffman, 45 King, who's kind of a legendary hip hop artist. Remy Ma was just fantastic. And naturally, Augie and Michael, Augie Duke and Michael Reed, who were a real life couple. People don't know. They just had a baby, and they are as compelling off screen as they are on screen. So I was really fortunate in that regard.
That's great. So you got to torture a real life couple.
I did. And it was, I think it helped the film because it's not only, it was a chance because a lot of times, couples don't necessarily translate to film. So I was a little bit concerned that what if their on-screen life was not matching their off-screen, but it really, it exceeded expectations, and they were just both tremendous. And indie films are difficult. Things come up, and it's a lot of unexpected things happen, and you have to pull together as a family. And in this case, we really did, and I think it shows on the screen.
Right. It seems like I remember documentaries about like the Dick Van Dyke Show, and that was really Carl Reiner's life, but Carl Reiner didn't look the part of himself, essentially, so they cast Dick Van Dyke in his role. Does that ever happen where real life couples that have been together 10, 15 years, well, it's LA, so 6 months to a year and a half, actually don't have that on-screen chemistry of like, you guys aren't really believable as a couple, even though you got 3 kids together?
Yeah, I'm sure it happens all the time. I think it's always a leap of faith when you're casting, and I tend to choose not to micromanage my talent. I never want to put them in a creative straitjacket. So it's really a leap of faith that you're cast properly and you kind of get out of their way. And in the case of 645, that was very much so. It's, had really, really good talent who were prepared, and they were serious, and they were there to do the work. And I was really fortunate in that regard.
So I do have to ask, what is more difficult? Working with being a Disney creative vice president, or working on an independent horror film with a $2.5 million budget or less?
Oh, the horror is much more. There's a running joke at Disney, and that is everybody at Disney has the same job, and that's to keep your job at Disney, because it's a great company, and it was a privilege and an honor to actually had a small company in Tribeca that I sold to Disney. That's how I ended up there. But it was, it took me out of the director's chair, but it was invaluable in terms of relationships and experience. And I just, knew I wanted to get back into the director's chair. So this was a great experience to be able to do it with 645 and well go, and then move forward from there.
listen, as much as I tease about Disney, I'm one of those people that the mouse has put in the people trap with annual passes and magic keys and everything else. So, I can tease all I want. They get over $1,400 a year from most people.
Yeah, it's true. It really is a great company, and I did learn a lot. And it was really helpful in terms of a lot of the new media stuff that I'm into, like NFTs and augmented reality. And I think it's all become part of like the same big pot of creative stew, if you will. So it's no longer traditional filmmaking. You really have to wear so many hats, and there's so many hyphenates nowadays. You've got kids in their grandmom's basement in Idaho or in Tampa just making the next masterpiece. So you've got to really be able to do it all and kind of embrace that mentality with open arms.
Does that also add to the experience of, similarly going back to the 1960s, not necessarily grindhouse films, but like the grittier films of the 60s and 70s where, the college students had taken over, and now here we are, we have a 4K camera in our pocket. We can essentially make something at home now.
It's a double-edged sword, in my opinion, because in my experience, everybody's walking around with a film studio in their pocket, right? You've got anybody with a smartphone can make a movie, and that's one of the challenges, is that there's a lot of white noise out there. So the challenge is to kind of rise to the surface and bubble up to the top, if you will. So while it's easier in terms of, like, when I started, it was 35 millimeter film and developing, and very, very expensive. Even to make a short film, it cost an arm and a leg. And nowadays you could take out your phone and do a film like Tangerine or other films. And it makes it good, and it makes it more difficult to kind of get seen, because everybody's suddenly a filmmaker. I'm a big bug on craft. I believe in understanding the discipline and the history of filmmaking, and I have a lot of respect for filmmakers, and my sensibility is a little more 70s in terms of pacing. So I think people who watch 645 might kind of key in on the fact that it's not cutty. It's paced the way to kind of suit my sensibility, if you will. And that's fine, because ultimately I need to be happy with the film. And then hopefully there's a like-minded audience that discovers it. And in this case, I'm pretty confident that there will be.
We just had the Critics' Choice Awards the other night. And being a member of the Critics' Choice Awards, there's been so many great films, and so many films that you wonder how they make it to the final process, because only 6 people have seen him, versus, say, Spider-Man, where 90% of the planet has seen it. What is it like trying to make an artistic film that means so much to you, that has such a small audience watching it, versus a bigger budget film that has a wider appeal? Like, where do you find the balance in wanting to be one or the other, or having the connection between both audiences or crowds?
Well, look, when you're not doing a Marvel film or a tentpole release, you don't want to kid yourself. You're not going to have the reach of a Spider-Man or a Marvel universe. But I think that going in, and you let the chips fall where they may. You work on making the best film that you can make, regardless of whether it's a micro budget, an indie film, a studio film. And I've done some studio films, and a lot of times with, dealing with larger budgets, there's more challenges, and you have more people kind of looking over your shoulder. The nice thing about this 645 experience is we really had creative control, and we kind of did it the way we wanted to. And I think we're going to be rewarded for that. And then it takes care of itself. This film will, as long as usually when you watch a rough assembly, it's very difficult for a filmmaker. And when I watch the raw assembly of 645, and again, there's like a 3-hour version of 645 that nobody will ever see except for myself and my editor, Sam Edelman, who's a brilliant editor, by the way. I think, it wasn't a terrible experience when I saw the rough assemblage. It felt pretty good. And I think that was the first indication that we were on the right track.
Okay, so of that 3-hour cut, what's something that you wanted to put in but just didn't fit the final narrative of 96 minutes?
Oh my God, there's a great scene with Armen Garo, Gene, who's the proprietor of the Cozy Nook, and he kind of gives them a whole tour of the basement, a la Grady in The Shining, and he kind of goes through the whole kitchen and all the different rooms. It's a great kind of a Steadicam shot. That did not make the final cut, and just things like that don't necessarily move the story along. But again, I like a longer film that's paced appropriate. A lot of people will fight you tooth and nail on that. In today's market, people are much more brutal when it comes to running time and slots and things like that. And you're trying to please many masters as a filmmaker when it comes to the completed film and post-production and things like that.
Or you could just be Zack Snyder and give Warner Brothers the finger and go, I'm going to give you a 4-hour and 2-minute cut of a movie that was initially going to be 320.
Yeah, but you have to get to the level of Zack Snyder. Probably wasn't always like that. You have to kind of earn that privilege. But I feel you, man. I totally hear where you're coming from.
Like, I honestly felt that, like, the Zack Snyder Justice League cut was like him going, you know what? You didn't let me finish the movie I wanted to finish. So here's everything just going into the stew. Totally.
No, totally. I agree with you. I think that it's, you know, filmmakers have the opportunity to do that. It's amazing. And I'm kind of in awe of that level of success and achievement and accomplishment in this business, because it's become so market driven. You talk about years in the 70s when it was a filmmaker's medium, the marketing voice had a very, very small voice in the room. Nowadays, it's the loud voice in the room, and it's almost like the tail wagging the dog in some cases. But I think hopefully we get back to the point where the people making the decisions trust the filmmakers a little bit more, and then they can leverage their creativity accordingly.
Well, you were able to be extremely creative with 645, so I commend you and Robert Klein and Robert Dean Klein and everybody else with the production on being able to pull this off. With that 70s sensibility, and I don't think gonzo would be the right word, for some of these micro budget films, but that creativity allowing to flow, especially say you had 28 days to film this or whatever the shoot time was. Does it almost feel like theater in that regard because you had the limited time to make the film?
I don't know about theater. I think, again, the challenge was really being mindful of the fact that it's a day that repeats and you don't want it to be monotonous or repetitive. So I think kind of digging into, that if we were going to fall on a sword, it was in those waters. It wasn't anything other than the fact that we really didn't want to pop out of the same hole twice, as David Lean used to say. So, and I think we accomplished that. I really do. The film has a nice balance and a nice kind of a patina throughout. And I was really excited about the finished product. We worked very hard with our sound team and our brilliant composer Kostas Christidis and Ron Aniello, who's actually Bruce Springsteen's producing partner. He did Bruce's last 5 albums. He actually scored the split screen montage in the film, which to me is one of my favorite sections. I love that piece of the film, where you kind of get inside Bobby's head, Michael Reed's head, and kind of see his inner struggles of trying to figure this thing out. That's not really a spoiler. There's a great split screen montage in the film. I hope you enjoy it, and things like that. So so that's that.
Okay, so this is a couple's getaway that goes awry. Has there been a personal hellish vacation that didn't match the brochure that kind of influenced certain scenes in the movie?
No, I knew I don't travel that much because I travel for work. So I'm not really a vacation guy. I love to location scout. And so when I was thinking about this town, I knew I wanted it to feel disconnected from the mainland. So we kind of created Bog Grove, almost like a block island, if people are familiar with the Northeast. So that creates a Shutter Island sense of unease and kind of claustrophobia. The town itself is not something that's really overshot. So I think Woody Allen shot Stardust Memories there, and it's a gorgeous throwback to these. I think it's the largest collection of gingerbread Victorians. It looks like, I keep saying, out of a Norman Rockwell painting. I'm kind of tired of the sound of my voice, but it really does look like it's out of a Norman Rockwell painting. And people throw around the fact that locations are characters in a film, and in the case of 645, it really is. The town just lends itself to this charming, idyllic getaway where things kind of go tragically wrong.
I want to see someone say that about a green screen, that the green screen is a character in the film.
It's a great point. I mean, I guess if the green screen fell over while you were filming, that could be applicable. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of we have some effects, but mostly it's in camera. I mean, 90% of 645 is in camera practical effects, which I'm a huge fan of. There's a couple little moments that we tweaked, which I'll keep to myself. But yeah, I'm a big fan of doing things in camera, and I think it, tertiary little details like that tend to enrich a film.
There are very few films that go to the film festival circuit that come out and get distribution. How exciting is that when that happens? I mean, you were at Catalina, you were in New York, you were in a handful of other film festivals, and to now be distributed and it's going to have a home entertainment release. What does that mean to you as a filmmaker versus having put out a film that only a handful of people will see at these festivals, and then it doesn't really go anywhere after that?
Well, it's a great question. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but we actually had a nationwide theatrical release through Regal Cinemas. And the way that came about, it's a great story of a friend of mine who's in theatrical distribution for like 40 years with MGM and Weinstein Co. He was begging me to see the film. And I said, well, why don't you just wait till, he's like, no. He's like, forget it. Send me the link. Because he knew we were sending it to festivals. His name is Mike. And he called me back the next day. He's like, this is a great film. I said, thank you. I said, maybe you could help us with a New York, LA, kind of friends and family premiere screening. And he goes, I think we could do a little bit better than that. And he called me back. He's like, Regal will give you a nationwide exclusive. So a film our size was in the theaters, bookended by Jungle Cruise and Suicide Squad and M. Night Shyamalan's Old and Black Widow. $200 million films were bookending my little tiny film. And that's a great feeling. And, forgetting, me or my cast or my crew, that in and of itself is exceptional, because theatrical is almost the way of the dodo bird. It's almost non-existent for filmmakers, particularly films this size. So we were psyched, and anything after the theatrical was in the win column for us. So, Well Go is gravy. And, seeing our film at a premiere in Union Square, New York City, it was insanity. It was so cool.
All right. So for the people that couldn't make it to the theater because whether, restrictions or just didn't feel comfortable going out in public, it's now Tuesday, March 22nd. Why do we need to sit there and see 645?
I think it's a great distraction. I think it's a great date film. It may even skew female. I think it's very, very entertaining and hopefully helps us for an hour and a half forget about all the madness that's going on in the world, which is never a bad thing.
Well, that's all we can hope for, and hopefully things settle down in this world, because it's gotten really out of hand as of late, to put it very mildly. Craig Singer, thank you so much for your time today. 645 comes to digital and Blu-ray and DVD on March 22nd from Well Go USA Entertainment. Have a great day over in New York. It's nice, it's bright, it's sunny, and things are opening up, sir. Oh, by the way, where can we find you on social media if we want to connect?
I'm pretty much on social media under Craig Singer. Craig Singer 1 is Instagram, but the film 645 is best to go to 645movie.com, and there's lots of information there. And hopefully you'll be seeing a lot more promotion. And let me just say, this has been a lot of fun. You've been a gentleman, and it's been a pleasure meeting you.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure is mine. Let me know when you come back out to Southern California. We'll at least go grab a cup of coffee together.
I would love that. Talk to you soon.
You got it.